and in-depth network. So we are a group of 9 people, and there are many other organizations which are willing to join this group, like UN Women and UNDP. This is a presentation on behalf of the regional core group as the secretariat to the API CRBS program. I would just go through the milestones prior to the third session of the StatCom, which was held in January 2012. It all started in the meeting, expert meeting in Dar es Salaam in June 2009, where we decided to raise the program to a very high level, think about a more holistic approach, and that was the time when the seed was sown, and that was the time a decision was taken to take it to the ministers. So the first conference responsible for ministers' conference, actually, responsible for civil registration was held in Addis Ababa in August 2010. Then this was followed by the expert group meeting on CRBS in January 2011 in Addis Ababa, which took a number of decisions based on the ministerial resolutions. And we formed the regional core group who would be leading the process in Africa, which was under the ECA, and we had in April 2011 the first meeting of the regional core group. Since then, we had almost 15 to 16 meetings of regional core groups. Not all of these meetings happen by physical meeting, but most of them are virtual meetings that we held quite regularly. The 7th ASSD was the first one which took the theme of CRBS in January 2012 in Cape Town. And that was very historic because it brought together not only the civil registrars, but the statisticians on the same table, who have not met in their own countries for many years, had come to one place, and that was the time really we created history, and thereon we see a lot of statistics. The statistics is back on the table on civil registration. Most of the statistics office had disengaged because the civil registration was not producing the statistics. But we are glad to see that this has resulted into huge movement in terms of the statistical office coming back back to the table and even leading the process in many of the countries. After the StatCom, for which we are going to report now, a comprehensive review of CRBS was done in April 2012. It was completed. And the heads of state and government endorsed the institutionalize of the ministerial conference as a biennial conference, which was a big decision. The second conference was held in Durban in September 2012, which actually moved, in the first conference, it is all about conceptualization, understanding the process. The second conference actually brought the action to the ground, asking countries to take certain steps. Then we trained a pool of African experts in May 2013 in Botswana, about 31 of them, gave them the tools and equipped them with tools and guidelines. And then what followed was 8th and 9th ASSD with a focus on CRBS on January 2013 and February 2014. In terms of achievements, as you know, the Conference of Ministers has been institutionalized as a permanent conference under the AUC, and this is being quoted as one of the best practices. In fact, the UN principles and recommendation quotes it as the best practice, because everybody knows that if you don't have the political commitment, the CRBS will not move at all. Regional CRBS group established and is fully functional. Guidelines and tools for assessment and planning developed by regional core group. And as I said, regional pool of experts have been developed, which is now supporting the countries. 21 countries have completed their assessment, 7 are in progress, and 3 countries are preparing for their assessment. So in total, almost 31 countries by the middle of 2015 will have their assessments and action plans ready for implementation. Almost all countries have constituted high-level coordination committees. This is one of the preconditions that we said, that if you need assistance, you need a high-level committee. And many of the high-level committees are led by the ministers, some by the permanent secretaries. The countries also have technical level committees, and these committees and high-level committees and all the technical committees are not just for assessment. These are standing committees which will continue to one, provide oversight, and 2, provide technical support to run this program till for a period of 5 years or 10 years, depending on the tenure of the committee. High-level political commitment in most countries. The countries, because they made commitments in Durban, they are asking what has happened, where are we, and so there is a lot of pressure in the country to complete assessments. National Statistics Office, as I said, are fully engaged and even leading the process in some countries. A large number of persons. I think we have already trained 400 to 450 people in the countries. Not us from here. It is those technical assistants, the experts that we had trained when they were doing the helping the countries to do assessment, the country-led assessment. In the process, we trained almost 400 people on CR and VS. Because normally the CR person would not know about VS and the VS person would not know about CR. So we just got them together and it is a complete CR-VS. So we have people who have CR-VS training and champions and emerging at country and regional level. That's very important. We need champions for such a program because it's a program that requires a lot of energy and perseverance. The African initiative have resulted in a lot of global momentum. A global civil registration and vital statistics group has been constituted. The World Bank is working on a global financing mechanism for CRVS, which is going to be launched in July 2015. And the precondition for any grant, because it is to be multi-donor trust fund, is that you have an assessment and a good plan that would be funded. So I think that is very important for us to know that we need a plan, we need an assessment if we have to access the global financing mechanism that will be put in place in July 2015. A global call for linkage with national identity management. There was a Seoul conference which has come out with a declaration that you cannot have a national identity system without a civil registration system. So that's very important for us to note, and this is what we are going to push in the next Ministers' Conference. The Clinton Foundation, Bloomberg Philanthropies, and UN Foundation will announce partnership with API CRVS next week, and the Statistician General of South Africa will be there as our representative representing the regional core group, that will announce partnership on API CRVS and gender. And the UN team, which is the most difficult team to get them to coordinate, are coordinating in the countries, and they are helping and supporting countries to do the assessment and plan. The last thing is the challenges. No predictable financing for implementation of CRVS improvement in country and regional level. The Secretariat is not adequately staffed, and it really poses a risk to the program. No adequate experts available for providing not adequate experts available for providing technical assistance to country. For example, we really don't have experts on cause of death on the continent who can support cause of death, development of cause of death statistics. Now, the typical case of Ebola, I mean, you don't even know how many people died and where they died and whether they died of Ebola or any other disease. So I think it's important for us to quickly do something to improve the cause of death statistics, and it has to be part of the civil registration initiative, not an independent initiative. No systematic process of sharing experience between countries. This is what we need to do as the Secretariat. That is what we are planning to do now. No systematic measurement of level of completeness in registration. You know, if you ask a country what is the level of birth registration, there is hardly 5 countries can tell you what is the level of birth registration. They depend on survey. I don't think we should depend on survey to tell us what is the level of registration. So, yeah, finishing. Some countries are yet to assess the CRVS system. And the last is points for consideration of the DGs here. Predictable financing needed for CRVS improvement at country level. Countries should be ready to fund day-to-day functions of CRVS system. We need to expand the pool of expert and for providing technical support to countries, much in line with the PHC program, because Population and Housing Census program provide a technical expert which continues to remain in the country for 5 years. I think we need a predictable technical assistance, need for more sustainable capacity development measures. We are going to present very soon a paper on that. The Secretariat should create a mechanism for experience sharing. Countries should set up mechanism for measuring completeness as a part of performance management, and countries who are yet to initiate assessment should start one very soon. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup d'avoir cité les différentes activités réalisées dans le cadre de ce groupe-là sur l'enregistrement des statistiques de l'état civil. Donc je passe la parole maintenant au représentant de l'Ouganda pour présenter les résultats du groupe de travail sur la gestion des données statistiques. Et bien sûr, vous avez 5 minutes. Plus ou moins quelque chose.
Thank you, Chair. Refer to document E/StatCom-4/8. This is a report of the African Group on Statistical Data Management. There is no presentation because you have the report. And you received this one yesterday, and therefore you should have read it. This group followed up on the high-level panel of eminent persons for the post-2015 development agenda, which made recommendations to the Secretary General on the development agenda beyond 2015. Now, I think what is important is to know that this group met in Joburg, South Africa, from 4th to 5th December 2013. And this was to cement the recommendations that were made by the panel of experts. My issues were actually handled yesterday when the experts here were discussing the data revolution. And therefore, they made my life very easy. Now, I'll straight away go to the recommendations that were made. One, that there was need for countries to understand the concept of a data revolution, that you have no choice, but you have to be in a revolution. And the revolution embraces a diverse range of data sources, tools, new technologies. And what it is saying is that you just cannot survive without information. Let me borrow the example of Paris of yesterday. That decisions are being made. Like here, all of us, most of us here, are household heads. But I'm telling you, there are very many decisions we are making at home through the social media, so you can't avoid the data revolution. So what would a country look like that has a data revolution? And this is what is on page 4. Let's quickly look at them. Should have done an institutional assessment of data production to see whether actually there's capacity for data to be produced. It should also be producing high quality data that is used. If it's not used, then it's not a data revolution. And it should also be able to mine the data so that the changing needs and the demands are catered for. But it should also be able to form partnerships with data producers and data users. But it should also be able to advocate the use, the current and future technologies that would achieve effective data collection and data management. The immediate steps that we agreed on in the meeting for achieving a data revolution, quickly. 1, all countries should complete a searchable inventory of all evidence-based data sources so that you know where your information is coming from. 2, they should utilize small area geography data to improve the usefulness of the data that is already available. 3, develop and enforce a set of minimum norms and standards for data production. 4, develop a communications and user engagement strategy. And this was discussed yesterday, that we don't know how to communicate, but it's high time we started to learn how to communicate so that other people will understand us. And then also to understand the political economy challenges which we talked about yesterday, that statistics is closer to politics today more than ever. And then the other recommendations were to do with the legislation, make sure that the legislation is up to date, and it also caters for the new technologies on the block. Other recommendations, you can read them in the report. But I would like to mention that there are a number of initiatives that have been handled by the ECA, Economic Commission for Africa, that are worth noting and are reinforcing for the data revolution. 1, the Africa Statistical Yearbook, which was done jointly between ECA, African Development Bank, and AUC. Now, this yearbook is a masterpiece because all of us DGs, we know the pressure we go through because in a particular day, you receive about 100 requests from around the world. And they expect all of them are urgent. So this statistical yearbook is a solution to us, at least to me, if it's not to you. The second one is on the high-level conference on the data revolution that was handled. Then there's also the knowledge networking. Again, these are activities of ECA, knowledge management strategy, which was endorsed by the 2014 Conference of Ministers. And it introduces knowledge facilitation service called the Solution Exchange. And those of you who have not read about it, read this report and you'll understand it. Then the other activities on the handbook on the conceptual framework for data flows in national statistical systems in Africa. And when you look at it, it brings into perspective geospatial technology that, you know, gone are the days when we'll be using only numbers. We must also use maps for people to understand us. But it also brings out the issue of data nodes, that national statistics offices are actually data nodes, and we must have a central data repository well coordinated so that we link up with the line ministries. Then the issue of metadata, explaining the data you have, and also the issue of interoperability, so that you have systems that connect with one another. We are also conversant with the SDMX, and I hope some of us have adopted that already. Then the coordination arrangements, which are very important, and then enabling technologies at the time of data collection, at the time of preserving the data, at the time of disseminating this data, and at the time of supporting users to understand the data that we are producing. So, Mr. Chairman, as I end, this meeting is invited to consider endorsing the recommendations of the African Group on statistical data management. Thank you, Chair. I hope I'm within 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup pour cet exposé très important. Et étant donné que vous avez déjà distribué le document, donc on va laisser le soin à nos invités donc, de lire un petit peu ce document-là. Et je passe directement la parole aux représentants de la BAD donc pour une dernière présentation sur le programme de comparaison internationale. Bien sûr, toujours 5 minutes, hein, on ne dépasse pas les 5 minutes.
Je suis bloqué là. Il y a un mot de passe.
La machine ne peut pas obéir. Voilà.
Oui, j'avais installé ça, mais je ne vois pas ça.
C'est vrai que les fois, il est catastrophique. Hein, le temps. Voilà, c'est là. Voilà. C'est ça.
Okay. Oui, c'est ça.
Et, qu'est-ce que c'est?
Non, c'est pas ça.
C'est pas ça?
Non.
ICP.
ICP, oui, c'est ça.
Oui.
ICP.
La présentation.
DG Zakaria of Kenya, c'est pas ça.
On va ICP Africa, c'est ça?
Ouais, ICP Africa, oui. Oui, c'est ça. Voilà.
Voilà, ok. On va mettre ça en grand écran. Bon.
C'est où le micro? Okay, thank you, Chair. Before starting, I just would like to make a comment. ICP Africa is 53 economies, and we are going to be 54 economies. And I'm sure if you put the weight of those 53 economies, it's more than 5 minutes. Okay. Okay, for my presentation, the outline, I will start by taking you through an overview of the 2011 ICP round, then give some highlight of the result, and see how Africa is positioning itself in the world, and briefly in terms of dissemination of results, potential uses of ICP, and what we have learned through that round, and then where we are going from here. Of course, given the time constraints, I will spend less time in some of the points. So if you want to compare the economic performance of two countries, what comes to mind is to use the GDP. But those GDP are local currency are not directly comparable. Then we can say we can use exchange rates, but the problem with the exchange rate is they don't measure the difference in terms of relative price level among countries. And also because of currency speculation and capital movement, short-term capital movement, there are some fluctuation. And because of those fluctuations, some country may appear richer or poor overnight. So we have to do it differently. And that's why it gives rise to the ICP, which is producing purchasing power parity. Using that to express those economic indicators in the same currency and also valued at a common price level. So let's look at, for example, if we want to make the comparison directly without using the PPP, just in constant term, of the 5 biggest economies on the continent. So from 2005 to 2011, that's how the different economy varies. And also, if you look, and later on, we'll see that that picture is not really giving us the right picture because it doesn't take into consideration the price level. Even though they are at the same, expressed in the same currency, the price level are different. So for the five smallest economies, it's the same thing. We have the trends over from 2005 to 2011. Now, why ICP, as I indicated earlier, is the long-standing deficiency of exchange rates. That's what gave rise to ICP, which started in 1970 as a project between the University of Pennsylvania and the United Nations, and then it evolved to become what it is today. So ICP is producing PPPs. What are those? Which kind of animals are PPPs? PPPs are specifically designed to provide the rate, their exchange rate, to provide a rate of exchange rate of currency that equalize the internal purchasing power parities of those currencies. So if you have two countries, just an exchange rate at which you need to convert the currency on one country compared to the second, so that you can purchase the same volume of goods and service in both countries. Now, formally, they are just expenditure weight average of relative price of a vast number of goods and the services consumed by household. So now in terms of Africa participation, when it started in 1970, we just have one African countries, and then the number of African countries increases. And if you can see, the real increase really happened between 1993 and 2005, where we passed from 22 countries to 48 countries. In fact, in 25, we have 48 countries who participate, and in 2011, this last round, we have 50 countries who participated. So the African countries who did not participate in 2011, we have 3. We have Eritrea, Somalia, and Libya. For obvious reason, they couldn't participate. At that time, we didn't have South Sudan. So in the result I'm going to present, we have only one Sudan. So in those 50 countries, Africa was the largest region which participate in terms of this exercise, which global exercise of computing purchasing power parities. So the program was managed and coordinated at the bank level with collaboration of sub-regional organizations, namely AfriStat, COMESA, ECOWAS, and SADC. And in terms of the different survey, the first table presents the data, the submission and metadata submission in terms of the main survey for household consumption. And then the second table are for the different survey in terms of housing, private education, compensation of employee and machinery. So from those results, what are from those data, what are the results? If we take the situation in 2005, where we have 48 countries which participated, if you want to compare them on the nominal GDP, this is the ranking we have: South Africa, then Nigeria, Egypt, Morocco, and Angola. And the rest of the countries account for only 34% of the total GDP of Africa. Now, what happened over the years from 2005 to 2011, the situation is about the same. Still in nominal terms, South Africa is still the first economy of the continent, followed by Nigeria and Egypt. Now, if we consider, for example, the same situation in 2011 compared to 2005, where we have now Algeria and Seychelles, which come into account, because in 2005 Algeria did not participate. Again, the picture is similar. The only difference is now we have Algeria, which come into play as the fourth biggest economy on the continent. Now, let's look at the situation now in terms bringing PPP in terms of real GDP. So we have similarly the same picture where South Africa is the first economy, followed by Egypt and Nigeria. And as you can see, if you compare, for example, the first picture, you can see, for example, the gap between South Africa and Egypt has narrowed in real term compared to when it's compared in nominal term. Now, the same picture in 2011, still we don't have Algeria and Seychelles here. We still have the same situation with, compared to 2005. We see that if we take the situation in real term, now the first economy is Egypt, followed by South Africa and Nigeria. And this can be explained from 2005 and 2011. The real growth rate of Egypt was higher than that of South Africa. And that's why this situation happened. And also, as I said, this PPPs take into consideration the price level. So if you take the price level in Egypt and South Africa, things are more expensive in South Africa than Egypt, and that's why we have that. Now, if we bring the 50 countries, Algeria and Seychelles into play, again, Algeria is positioning itself as the fourth largest economy on the continent. So globally, from the continent, this is how the situation presents itself in terms, and we see that a lot of variability in terms of the wealth from one country to another. So we have a lot of variation. Now, what's going to happen if we use the Nigerian new figures? After Nigeria has rebased its GDP, when we bring those numbers into play, in nominal term, Nigeria is now number one, followed by South Africa and Egypt, and then Algeria in fourth position again. Now, in real term, the picture is the same, still Nigeria, Africa, and Algeria. So this is if we take into consideration the new numbers of Nigeria. And over the continent, that's how the situation is. Now, if we take Africa and the world, Africa accounts for 14% of the world population, but only 4.5% in terms of the GDP share. And compared to 2005, there are some progress. In 2005, Africa was at 3.3% of the world GDP share. Now, if you look at income distribution on the different countries, in terms of, for example, per capita GDP, countries with the highest per capita GDP are Equatorial Guinea, Seychelles, Gabon, and Mauritius. And those with the lowest at the bottom of the spectrum are Liberia, Comoros, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Burundi. Now, let's look at investment in terms of gross fiscal capital formation. The highest are, again, Equatorial Guinea, Seychelles, Botswana, and Mauritius. And the lowest, Liberia, Comoros, Burundi, and Central Africa. And if you look, for example, those countries also have the lowest GDP per capita, and because they have a low GDP per capita, they cannot generate the required saving to invest for future growth. And this is really expressing what some people call the economic development dilemma. Those countries are poor because they are poor, they cannot invest, and they cannot invest because they are poor. And if you take this situation, really, for example, after the Second World War, Europe was at this level. Europe was at this level. Then we have the Marshall Plan who come into play to help Europe get out of the situation. So I think this picture really we have to spend, or especially our leaders, spend a lot of time thinking on how we're going to get out of vicious circle. And especially, for example, as we all know, we all the time relying on outside resources to conduct our development. For example, among our countries, in most of our countries, we don't have national savings. So if we don't have national savings, how can we expect other people to give us money to develop ourselves? I think we have to wake up and stop dreaming and get to work. So if you look at per capita GDP and investment per gross capital formation, they are highly correlated. For example, if you regress per capita gross formation onto GDP, this is what you get, and you see that the quality of it is very good. And since it is just a simple linear regression, so it also translates that if you take the square root of that, you see that the correlation between the two is above 0.9. It's about 0.93. So they are highly correlated. Now let's look at cost in terms of price level. At the GDP level, the most expensive countries on the continent is Angola, followed by Gabon, South Africa. That's what I was saying in the comparison of South Africa and Egypt. If you bring the price level into play, that's how the picture gets reversed. So those are the most expensive country on the continent. And the cheapest, you see, is Egypt, followed by Ethiopia, Uganda, Madagascar, and so forth. Egypt is the cheapest country. If you want to get more for your money, go to Egypt. Now, let's look at, now, if you look across the continent also, that's how it appears in terms of countries where it's more expensive and countries where it's cheapest, and countries which are on the middle. So you can see there is a big variation in terms of the cost over the continent. So since we are talking about agriculture, what is the situation of food? Also, when you look, you see countries where it's hard to feed itself. It's Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Angola. And when you go to Egypt, Uganda, you can eat easily for less money. And also we have some situation in between. Now, in terms of bread and cereal, just one of component of food, this also is the situation which is quite similar to what we get for food, from the most expensive to the least expensive, and country in the middle. Now, let's look at welfare measured by the actual individual consumption, which is a good indicator for measuring the welfare, because it includes all good consumed by household, regardless of who pays, whether the household do the purchase themselves or they get it free from NPIS or government. So countries where people are better off are Seychelles, Mauritius, Egypt, South Africa, Tunisia, Botswana, Algeria, Gabon, Namibia, and Swaziland. Those are the 10 And you see that they rank from 2 times the African average to 4 times, more than 4 times. For Seychelles, it's about 5 times the African average. So that's in terms of welfare. And countries which are at the over side of the spectrum, you see for those countries, they don't have even half of the African average. So at the bottom we have DRC, Liberia, Comoros, Burundi, Niger, Guinea, Central African Republic, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, and Burkina Faso. And you see not even, as I said, not even half of the African average. So if we position Africa in the world in terms of...
S'il vous plaît, vous avez presque terminé.
In terms of the GDP, this is how it's presented. You see again, compared to over region, we are behind. In terms of the price level, okay, the dissemination has been started and it's going on. Okay, potential use of the PPPs. You have a report, you can look it in. In terms of at the international level, all UN agencies use PPP to compute their indicator for their different mandate, either UNDP for the Human Development Index, UNESCO, UNICEF, and so forth. So what have you learned from this round? Integrating the ICP and CPI data collection for the modern household survey create a big synergy and reduce costs for both operations. And also the way the program was run as a network, bringing all stakeholders to work together on some activity had a leverage effect on both the bank and participating country. And in fact, that leverage effect, you can quantify it, and we wrote a paper on that, if you are interested, quantifying that leverage effect. In terms of the participation of the Statistical Training Center, it was weak, exception to the NCA of Abidjan, who actively participated in the updating of the software. For the over STC, the participation really was weak. And really there is a need to introduce ICP in the curriculum of those schools, and also to encourage them to conduct specific research on ICP topic. Another point is in terms of the Accra Declaration, countries have yet to comply with that declaration, where the head of, or where you have decided to make ICP part of your regular activity. So that declaration is still pending, and countries have yet to comply with that regulation. So where do you go from here? For the 2015, we are planning to undertake a reduced ICP, where the data collection will be reduced to, in terms of price, will be reduced to a capital city with a reduced list. But improvements compared to 2009, we're going to have a full GDP coverage. So last week we had a workshop where we start discussing the preparatory activity in terms of the regional list, where it was presented and discussed. And we are planning to have a launching workshop in February and to start data collection in March. Another point is the integration of ICP and CPI activity. There is during that workshop, one of the recommendations is to conduct an assessment of CPI and HCPI of in all countries with a view to identify points which need further improvement, and also to work towards really that integration. Yesterday we were told that the integration is effective. I think there is a confusion. The integration is not effective in the sense it's true in most countries the ICP data collection rests on the CPI data collection infrastructure. For ICP data collection, we use CPI data infrastructure. But this is just the beginning of the integration, because to have integration, we have to have a bigger basket common to both statistical operations. To that, it was proposed to have a group of 7 countries to conduct a pilot study, and also work with STC to really have ICP on board of their curricula. Thank you. While I'm here, I would like to really indicate that this work has been possible because of the hard work of national price experts and national accountant of participating countries. Thank you.
Merci. Merci beaucoup pour cette excellente présentation, une présentation pédagogique dans laquelle vous avez mis au point donc différents indicateurs de comparaison entre les différents pays africains. Voilà donc, étant donné que nous avons accusé un retard de presque 20 minutes, on va réserver uniquement 10 minutes pour les interventions. Ouais. On va commencer tout d'abord par la droite. Oui. On va donner la parole à ceux qui n'ont pas encore pris la parole. Oui, Ibrahima.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Comme je suis le premier qui prend la parole après ces brillants exposés, je voulais...
Et brièvement, s'il vous plaît, Ibrahima.
Si. Au nom de tous ceux qui vont intervenir, les féliciter et faire observer ceci. C'est vrai, Monsieur le Président, vous avez dit, on parle de mesurer la productivité, de mesurer la compétitivité, mais il y a d'autres concepts qui apparaissent et qu'on doit mesurer. Je donne un exemple, c'est la question de l'intégration économique. Comment on mesure ça? C'est la question aussi de développement inclusif. Comment on mesure ça? Donc je suggère qu'au sortir ou à la fin de cette réunion, qu'on mette en place un groupe qui va réfléchir à la prise en compte de tous ces concepts qui vont être imposés aux statisticiens avant même l'avènement d'après 2015. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Merci beaucoup. La gauche puis la droite. Non, la gauche puis le centre. Allez. Oui, la Libye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a comment to the presenter of ADB about Libya joining the CBI and HCBI and ICP. As you said, yes, there was trying for Libya to join these programs in 2011, but to stop because of the war in Libya. But the war ends now, and we are going back. We're returning to the African community, and we have actually some arrangements with the ADB Bank to go back. So just to comment that about this matter. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Quelqu'un du centre, s'il veut? Non? OK, donc. Monsieur Badi.
Thank you, Chair. The problem that we have is that the Pan-African institutions, ECA and AU, have not facilitated the presentation of this to ministers. And the ministers are looking at integration, and the ICP gives us production and consumption markets. And that gives us a clue around what should inform Africa's industrialization agenda. This is a big weakness in the system. And when I said these people are not planning together, it doesn't show in the outcomes. And we had to force them a few months ago in Addis to deal with this matter. We need to talk to these institutions that they must work together because they shortchange us in terms of informing policy on things that are very, very critical, such as is the ICP. We have lost time since 2005. We are not able to present this in those meetings. We have lost time, we couldn't present it in Abuja. And it's a big problem, Chair. We need to discuss with the top leadership of our countries. And these discussions cannot be mitigated by officials, because for as long as they are mitigated by officials of ECA and AU, we are not able to penetrate that space. In 2007, in Ouagadougou, as countries, we penetrated our ministers and talked about the census. The consequence of that, we have 50 countries that have actually undertaken the census, and we have focused on countries that emerge out of conflict. So as a recommendation, and a very strong one, When the ministers' conference meet in March, this is the presentation on Africa's integration in terms of production and consumption markets. And the CPI is central, ICP is central to it. I thank you.
Merci. Merci beaucoup. Gauche? Oui. Et très rapidement. Quickly, please. Okay, ma'am.
Thank you. I was just thinking the transition that all of us are witnessing from Millennium Development Goals to Sustainable Development Goals brings into a question
Quickly, please.
the relevance of the GDP as a major factor in comparison. Because when you now adjust the GDP to become sustainable domestic product, taking into cognizance inclusiveness and sustainability, then what will your result do? What will happen to your results? It might be that a country is having high growth, and when you get per capita growth, then when you not take into cognizance inclusiveness and environmental sustainability, the result might change. So in the future work, I was thinking that there should be adjustment to be sure that the growth is sustainable, so that before you can conclude that this country is better. Finally, the regression results, the correlation, I don't know. In econometrics, we are very careful. You see, when you don't test the stationarities of those variables, especially the time series or these nominal variables, you may run into a problem of having what is called spurious model. A spurious model is a model that makes you to accept an hypothesis when you're supposed to reject the hypothesis. So we have to be very careful on how you do the estimations and how you run your graphics. You must test for the stationarities. You must test for the dynamics. You must test for the, the characteristics of those variables.
Merci.
Before we could conclude. There's an important thing I want to talk about the civics. Just give me 1 minute. On the people that presented on the CV, the civil registration and various statistics, and also on demography, I want to say this. We must distinguish between vital statistics, and we must distinguish between social security. Now, we must distinguish between national identity. So, civil statistics, vital statistics, civil registration, plus national identity management equals to social security. And social security is the end. So I think you can merge them together so that they can integrate what is called biometric framework, so that we can be able to get social security system that works.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup pour toutes ces questions techniques, purement techniques. Ok, donc, dernière intervention de l'Algérie. Et on va céder la parole aux orateurs.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voudrais faire juste un tout petit commentaire concernant le groupe de travail sur l'emploi et l'économie informelle. Je crois que nos collègues sont certainement convaincus qu'outre l'emploi, il est important de prendre en charge d'autres aspects liés à l'informalité. Et il n'a certainement pas échappé à nos collègues que le SCN 2008 a consacré un chapitre à part au secteur informel, qui est le chapitre 25, intitulé « Aspect informel de l'économie ». Voilà, je vous remercie, monsieur.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, je donne directement la parole aux orateurs.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je n'ai pas beaucoup de questions. Concernant le point de la Libye, c'est bien noté. Donc, on verra en fonction disons, de ce que la banque va décider, parce que, vous savez, au niveau de la banque, les différentes missions dans les pays, c'est la sécurité au niveau de la banque qui décide de si on doit aller ou ne pas aller. Donc, en fonction de la situation qui va certainement s'améliorer, on prend note que la Libye veut participer, disons, à la phase 2015 du PCI. Bon, la remarque de Pali est la bienvenue. Concernant la dernière remarque, en termes de regarder, disons, la saisonnalité des variables, disons que On n'a pas besoin d'être un économétricien en regardant ce graphe pour savoir qu'il y a une relation entre ces deux variables-là. Juste oublions même tout ce qui est juste common sense. Quand on regarde le graphe, on voit comment évoluent ces deux variables. Et aussi, ce qu'il faut noter, comme quelqu'un l'a dit, all models are wrong, but some are useful. Et je crois qu'on doit rester dans ces limites-là. Merci.
Merci. Je voudrais, par rapport à l'intervention de la Côte d'Ivoire, dire qu'il y a effectivement un groupe qui travaille sur l'intégration, les indicateurs sur l'intégration en Afrique. Et maintenant, s'agissant des questions liées à l'inclusivité, je voudrais dire que notre groupe a également abordé cette question. Il s'agit d'un ensemble d'indicateurs. Et si vous voyez bien les points que nous avons examinés, à savoir le marché du travail, l'économie informelle, la migration, la protection sociale. Il s'agit d'un ensemble d'indicateurs qui pourraient permettre de voir dans quelle mesure, lorsqu'il y a croissance économique, dans quelle mesure il y a une meilleure insertion sur le marché du travail, dans quelle mesure il y a une plus grande transition des unités du secteur informel vers le secteur formel, et dans quelle mesure les indicateurs sur la protection sociale, puisque c'est l'un des objectifs au niveau du continent, c'est avoir une sécurité sociale universelle. Donc il faut voir dans quelle mesure il y a des progrès qui se réalisent en termes de nombre de personnes couvertes par la sécurité sociale d'année en année dans nos pays. Et en s'agissant des questions de productivité, nous sommes tout à fait d'accord qu'il faut poursuivre. Donc, sur cette question, je veux dire que c'est un ensemble d'indicateurs. Le groupe est tout à fait ouvert pour travailler avec toutes les personnes qui pourraient contribuer pour qu'on puisse avoir une liste d'indicateurs la plus exhaustive possible. Bon, s'agissant de la Libye, effectivement, il a pris part à nos travaux. Nous sommes tout à fait ouverts. C'est un groupe qui est ouvert. Et nous avons dit qu'on est prêt à travailler avec le pays. Et surtout qu'en termes de formation sur les instruments d'harmonisation, l'atelier devant couvrir la Libye n'a pas encore eu lieu. Et donc nous pensons qu'au moment où on va organiser cet atelier, les représentants de la Libye pourront prendre part aux travaux. Bien sûr, l'Algérie, effectivement, le groupe n'a pas perdu de vue la dimension emploi qui est traitée au niveau du système de comptabilité nationale version 2008. C'est d'ailleurs pour cette raison que le groupe de travail est parti d'un contexte qui a été relevé, c'est que la contribution de l'économie informelle au PIB est extrêmement importante et qu'il fallait en tenir compte. Et ensuite, l'autre dimension de ce secteur informel, c'est la contribution à l'emploi qui contribue à la réduction de la pauvreté. Voilà quelques contributions que je pouvais donner. Après,
thank you, Chair. I would like to comment on the issue by the DG of Côte d'Ivoire. What is data revolution? Data revolution is making us statisticians think outside the box. There are very many people who want information, and we are not able to produce it. So the moment we engage producers and users and different stakeholders, we'll be able to produce the statistics that actually is wanted, that is needed. We must stop thinking that the only statistics we produce is CPI, GDP, and these other simple things. We must engage users and producers to generate more statistics. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Ils m'ont dit que nous sommes en retard pour la pause café. Donc là, oui. Là, c'est le baladeur.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I was one of the presenters, so I thought I should react to one or two points which were raised here. One is on the inclusive measurement. How do we measure inclusive development and sustainable development and all that? I think one of the important things is, as statisticians, we use rates and ratios, and therefore, if you think anything which is per capita, and if you want to measure at the most margins of the society, you require the population at that level. So if you don't have the dynamic population of estimates of dynamic population at the lowest level of the marginalized group, you cannot do inclusive development. And I think by its very nature, civil registration is inclusive. Civil registration is universal, civil registration is permanent, and therefore it's inclusive and sustainable. So if you don't know what population is being born where, how do you plan for schools? If you don't know how many children are dying where, of what disease, how do you plan health interventions? And then you leave out at the margins of the society, because these are the people who don't come to register. So I think it's very important for us to understand that you cannot have a data revolution without civil registration. It's not about technology. It's about the basics that you have to talk about. That's one issue. The other is the social security and national ID. I think now time has come where the national ID systems have been very heavily funded. So they have gone ahead and done very sophisticated systems, and now they have realized that if you don't link it with civil registration, it's going to be a disaster. And that's what is going to happen. Election lists are ghost elections. The deaths are not taken out. The births are not added. And what you have within 3 years is a redundant database which cannot be used at all. So people have now realized that if you have to have a national ID management system, there has to be two subsystems, the national identity system and the civil registration system, to both together constitute a national identity management system. Otherwise, it will be a big failure. Thank you, sir.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Je crois qu'on va lever la séance puisque nous sommes vraiment en retard. Peut-être pas la suite. Hein. Est-ce que c'est urgent de faire ce commentaire-là? Oui. Dernier commentaire.
Very quickly, Chair. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity. Just 3 points, and I'll be very quick on them. There was an issue that was raised on integration. I think also the Statistical General of South Africa raised it, and also I think there was a question, I think, from Cote d'Ivoire. The bank, together with the other Pan-African institutions, we're actually working on an integration index to see how we can actually incorporate some of these economic aggregates, come up with something that would be able to answer to this agenda. However, we would like to call upon the research institutions, including Professor from Nigeria, to really tap on this data that we have at the bank on ICP 2005, 2009, and 2011. It's a huge amount of data, and all what we have done at the bank is what one would call descriptive statistics. There's a lot more that needs to be done. So please write to us if you want to have access to that data. We'll provide it to you to do further analysis on the data that we have. The second issue that I want to raise, Chair, is the work that Abdullah mentioned about for 2015. We have sent an email to all directors in this room, and we have asked them to send to us the names of the price statisticians as well as national accountants who are working on the ICP, so that we can immediately begin to engage them on the 2015 abridged ICP. Thank you, Chair.
Merci beaucoup. Voilà, on vous invite à la pause café. 15 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Allô, le président me demande, est-ce que les DG ne peuvent pas se mettre à la première rangée et à la deuxième rangée pour faciliter l'identification? Those who are representing countries, Director General, should be on the first row, the second row.
Can you explain why we should do that? Because if we have run this meeting, which is a formal meeting, in the way we are, there's no reason why we should rearrange ourselves now. Why?
There is no plate name anyway.
So why should we do that? No. Colleagues, we cannot be run like boys here. We will not accept to be run like boys. No, and boys and girls, no.
Chers collègues, on va commencer, s'il vous plaît. La traduction, est-ce que c'est bon? Maintenant? Ok, donc nous arrivons maintenant à la dernière session avant le déjeuner. Mais avant ça, je vais donner la parole à notre collègue donc, du Sud-Afrique. Et très rapidement, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Chair. It's a quick point coming out of the previous session on CRVS.
La traduction, s'il vous plaît. Je ne sais pas. Hein? C'est bon? OK.
Thank you, Chair. It's a quick point coming out of the CRVS presentation in the previous session, while a quick one, yet a very substantive one. We are running a big risk with the CRVS.
J'ai pas de traduction. Moi. Tu as la traduction?
Thank you, Chair. It is as regards the presentation on the CRVS in the previous session. We are running a big risk on CRVS. Firstly, let us understand the level at which we as NSOs have placed the CRVS in relation to policymakers coming out of a mandate of our ministers who deal with civil registration. At the ECA at the stage, CRVS is in the hands of one person, that is Mr. Raj. And when it's one person, not even support or a structure that supports this critical issue, it's much more risky. I think we need to take a resolution that it must be taken up with the ECA, that this issue of CRVS coordination within the ECA has to be strengthened. Otherwise, we're in a very serious risk. This is a man who can't even take leave. I mean, when he's on leave, CRVS literally goes standstill. And you can't have a situation like that on something so critical like this that takes us forward in statistical development. So we'll need a resolution on that, taking it up with the ECA. Thanks.
OK, c'est noté. Alors donc, on passe donc à la dernière session et je cède la parole à Yao donc pour présenter le rapport sur la charte africaine de la statistique, l'état d'avancement, difficultés et voies à suivre.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je pense que chacun a le rapport sur la charte africaine de la statistique. Donc, je ne vais pas faire une présentation PowerPoint parce que chacun a eu le rapport hier. Et nous faisons nos PowerPoint chaque année, mais l'état, l'évolution de la signature et de la ratification ne change pas tellement. Donc nous pensons qu'il n'est pas nécessaire parce que les pays se connaissent eux-mêmes. Ceux qui n'ont pas signé, ceux qui n'ont pas ratifié se connaissent eux-mêmes. Donc je pense qu'il n'est pas fait une présentation PowerPoint par rapport à cela. Mais juste rappeler que depuis son adoption en 2009, la Charte africaine de la statistique, qui décrit des principes, 6 principes fondamentaux pour la production des statistiques de qualité sur le continent. Et la Charte a été adoptée par vous-même à Gisenyi en 2007 et qui a été soumise à la conférence des ministres de l'économie et des finances en 2008 et adoptée aussi par les ministres de la Justice en 2009 et par les chefs d'État et de gouvernement en février 2009 à Addis Ababa. Et sur la base de l'adoption, un courrier a été envoyé à tous les États membres, demandant à chaque État membre de pouvoir prendre les dispositions nécessaires pour que la charte soit signée et ratifiée. À ce jour, depuis 2009, nous avons eu 16 ratifications de la charte. Et comme vous le savez, dans la dernière clause de la charte, il est dit que si 15 pays ratifient la charte rentre en vigueur. Donc cela veut dire que depuis le mois d'avril 2014, la charte est rentrée en vigueur. Mais qu'est-ce que cela veut dire, la charte est rentrée en vigueur? Cela veut dire que les dispositions qui sont dans la charte, les 6 principes fondamentaux de la charte, doivent être mis en œuvre par les États membres. Et que vous devrez prendre les dispositions utiles dans vos lois, dans les stratégies nationales de développement de la statistique. Nous avons préparé des guides méthodologiques afin de traduire les différents principes de la charte, que cela puisse vous aider lorsque vous préparez votre stratégie nationale de développement de la statistique, que vous pouvez incorporer les éléments de la charte africaine de la statistique dans les SDS. Nous avons aussi, avec l'appui de Paris 21, avec Statistical South-Africa, développé aussi un guide méthodologique pour pouvoir vous aider à pouvoir réviser les différentes lois nationales de la statistique. Je pense que certains pays l'ont fait, comme le Sénégal et la Côte d'Ivoire, qui ont regardé les principes de la charte africaine de la statistique et qui ont pu intégrer les principes de la charte dans leur loi nationale de la statistique. Et comme si quelqu'un le disait hier, disant que l'Afrique, les lois nationales de la statistique en Afrique datent de l'époque de la colonisation et que ces lois doivent être révisées. Nous pensons que la charte met à votre disposition certains éléments qui peuvent vous aider à pouvoir réviser vos différentes lois nationales pour assurer que la statistique est bien coordonnée au niveau national, parce qu'au niveau national, il y a plusieurs producteurs. L'Institut national n'est pas reconnu dans certains pays comme le coordinateur du système statistique africain. Nous pensons que la charte permet de donner ce leadership de coordination à l'Institut national de la statistique afin qu'elle soit l'organisme central de coordination du système statistique au niveau national. La charte aussi donne un instrument de coordination de la statistique au niveau régional, aux communautés économiques régionales, ainsi qu'au niveau continental, que les organisations panafricaines puissent se mettre ensemble pour que les efforts soient coordonnés afin de pouvoir supporter des pays pour la production des statistiques de qualité. Donc il y a les différents processus, comment la charte peut être ratifiée, comment la charte peut être signée. Le document est devant vous, je ne vais pas m'attarder à cela. Le point 5, comme il est dit, lorsque la charte rentre en vigueur, au niveau national, qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire? Il faut que les pays prennent les dispositions pour appliquer systématiquement les principes de la charte, et les pays dans leur région doivent prendre les dispositions afin de veiller que les objectifs de production statistique au niveau régional et au niveau continental puissent respecter les principes de la charte africaine de la statistique. Au niveau continental, la Commission de l'Union africaine va travailler avec la BAD et la CEA et toute organisation au niveau régional et les organisations internationales pour assurer que la charte soit mise en œuvre et que les principes de la charte soient respectés par les organisations internationales. Le champ d'applicabilité de la charte, c'est l'article 10 de la charte africaine de la statistique. La charte s'applique aux lois, aux législations nationales sur la statistique. La charte s'applique au plaidoyer en faveur de la statistique. La charte s'applique aussi à la mobilisation des ressources, à la coordination et la collecte des données. Et avec l'appui de Paris 21 et maintenant avec Eurostat, nous sommes en train sur la base des guides que nous avons élaborés, nous voulons conduire, et cela a commencé par Paris 21, un travail de self-assessment, d'auto-évaluation. On a fait ça en 2011, nous comptons continuer à faire cela pour que les pays s'auto-évaluent par rapport au guide et au questionnaire qui a été produit. Et nous allons aussi, dans le cadre du programme panafricain, avec l'appui de l'Union européenne, entreprendre des mécanismes d'évaluation par les pairs pour assurer que la statistique produite et la coordination statistique au niveau national respectent les principes fondamentaux de la Charte africaine de la statistique. Donc, voici ce que je voulais vraiment présenter à vous, et que sur la base de ces rapports, nous allons produire régulièrement devant votre Assemblée des rapports périodiques sur les mécanismes d'auto-évaluation, sur les mécanismes d'évaluation par les pairs, pour que vous puissiez prendre des recommandations et que ça puisse servir de rapport, de champ de bonnes pratiques pour que la statistique soit mieux coordonnée en Afrique et qu'on puisse produire des statistiques de qualité en Afrique. La charte, c'est un instrument légal qui permet vraiment de coordonner la production statistique en Afrique, et cela permettra, comme notre palais se plaignait hier, qu'il n'y a pas de coordination au niveau panafricain. Je pense que la charte vraiment met en place ce cadre-là pour que les organisations panafricaines, les organisations au niveau régional et même les organisations au niveau international puissent coordonner leurs efforts au niveau de l'Afrique pour qu'on puisse produire des statistiques de qualité. Et en plus des évaluations par les pairs, nous voulons aussi entreprendre des formations en leadership, parce que nous, dans de nombreux pays, le statisticien n'est pas vraiment proche du politique. Souvent, dans certains pays, le DG des statistiques ne parle même pas au ministre. Nous pensons que la charte peut être vraiment ce cadre-là pour lier la statistique à la politique, afin que des moyens soient donnés aux instituts nationaux de statistique, afin qu'ils puissent produire des statistiques de qualité. Nous voulons aussi assurer aussi le marketing statistique, parce qu'en tant que statisticiens, nous ne vendons pas bien nos produits. Je pense que le collègue de la BAD a présenté avec des belles cartes, qui a fait que les gens ont vraiment apprécié son document. Si c'était dans un autre document, on n'aurait pas bien apprécié ça. Nous pensons qu'il faut mettre en place des séances de formation, de marketing de produits statistiques pour assurer que les leaders politiques entendent ou bien comprennent la statistique, et que les médias puissent vraiment reporter effectivement et efficacement les données qui sont produites en Afrique. Donc voici quelques éléments que nous mettons en place et que l'année prochaine nous allons commencer à travailler, puisque la charte est rentrée en vigueur cette année. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vais passer la parole à mon collègue qui a travaillé sur l'Institut afin de faire la présentation sur l'Institut. Prof, il y a le floor.
Oui, Bali.
I think the two presentations are quite different, and perhaps we need to comment on and if you allow us, to comment on the expose on the charter. I think we need two separate, but if you allow me, I would do so. Discussion on the two things.
Je demande la permission de la salle. Est-ce que vous êtes d'accord qu'on discute maintenant la charte? Hein? OK? Oui, Anthony. Cap-Vert. Je suis pas libre. Mais.
Oh, sorry.
Bonjour, merci Docine pour les points de situation sur la charte africaine de la statistique. Pour vous dire que dans le cas de Cap-Vert, la charte est déjà approuvée par le gouvernement et maintenant ils sont en train d'être ratifiés par le Parlement. Et les informations que j'ai, la charte est déjà au Parlement capverdien, donc je pense que dans les prochains mois, on aura la charte ratifiée. Merci.
Excusez-moi, on va donc commencer la discussion de la charte africaine de la statistique. Et là, je dois remercier Yao donc, pour cette présentation, pour tous les éléments présentés donc, sur l'état d'avancement de la mise en œuvre de la charte africaine de la statistique, qui constitue certainement un élément important et une assurance pour les instituts nationaux de statistique afin d'exercer donc leurs fonctions dans de bonnes conditions et en respectant essentiellement les principes cités dans la charte. Voilà, donc on va ouvrir la discussion officiellement sur ce point-là. Et là, je vais donner la parole à monsieur. Oui, allez.
Ok, merci Monsieur le Président. Et moi, je suis du Togo. C'est pour porter à la... Bien sûr que c'est mentionné dans le document, mais c'est rappeler à l'attention des collègues que le Togo vient de ratifier la charte et que ce que nous pouvons demander maintenant par rapport à la suite du processus, s'il est possible d'avoir des éléments au niveau de l'Union africaine qui vont permettre de nous guider pour le reste du processus. Ça pourra beaucoup nous aider. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. Okay. Voilà. Maintenant, c'est 18 pays qui ont ratifié. Oui. Ah, là, le 19e pays. Je vais vous donner la parole.
Chair, South Africa has not ratified the charter, but not because it doesn't want to. Our behavior and conduct is consistent with ratification. And indeed, we promise that by the end of 2015, before the end of 2015, we'll have ratified. I think we need to actually reflect on what the AU has introduced in the context of statistics systems in the continent. The introduction of the charter is a milestone in the work that the continent does. And it sets us on the right path for our own facilitation of factual conversation in our own countries. What we need to do is to look at harmonization. I know that we have got 14 areas. We want to harmonize those. But for those that have actually moved, for instance, the national accounts, the civil registration and vital statistics, the censuses, we need to have a process by which all that data is integrated. The African Development Bank has already helped us with the information highway, which provides access to citizens. But what we need to do as regards the census data, end of 2015, 2014 we'll have concluded the round of censuses on the continent with the biggest number of countries. What we need to do as Africans is to agree that this data will be consolidated so that it can reflect an African perspective. You don't have to go country by country, but we have to integrate and harmonize that data ex post, because in some instances we never ex ante agreed on the types of questions, and we need to do that. ADB had already agreed that it can provide us with the kinds of resources to do so. As South Africa said, it will handle the technical aspects of it. And if we could pull that together so that we have an Africa-wide, when you look at 0 to 4, you have an Africa-wide kind of thing, and then country by country, it will help us a lot. So I would argue that an ex post and an ex ante focused statistical strategies for specific series of statistics has to be implemented. And I think that will revolutionize the way Africa works. So I wish to congratulate and thank the AU for really leading this process over a protracted period of time. I thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup pour toutes ces idées-là. Alors, je cède la parole au rapporteur.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vais être bref pour dire que le Gabon a ratifié la charte depuis octobre 2014. Je viens de demander à ce qu'on m'envoie la copie de la ratification pour qu'au moins l'Union africaine ait la copie de la ratification avant la fin de cette réunion. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Côte d'Ivoire.
Par rapport à la réaction des collègues, je crois qu'il y a un problème de procédure. Quand on ratifie un test international, on doit ramener ce test-là à l'institution. C'est-à-dire on appelle ça déposer les effets de cette ratification. Tant que ce n'est pas fait, ils ne prennent pas en compte. Donc je demande aux pays qui ont ratifié, c'est vrai, c'est ratifié, il faut leur envoyer à travers votre ministère des Affaires étrangères pour que ce soit réceptionné. Merci.
Merci. Oui. Ah, vous avez le mic devant vous.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je suis de Centrafrique. Comme vous le savez, nous aurions été les tout premiers pays à ratifier cette charte. À ce jour, nous ne retrouvons pas les fonds du dossier à cause de tout ce que vous savez. Mais nous avons repris le processus à zéro et parallèlement, nous sommes en train de réviser notre loi statistique de 2001 pour y intégrer ces observations. Je pense que ça ne durera pas pour que cette charte soit ratifiée. Mais au passage, je voudrais féliciter les pays qui ont déjà ratifié cette charte, très humblement, et également l'Union africaine d'avoir initié ce processus. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. Droit, gauche, est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un qui veut prendre la parole ici? Non? Allez, oui, Guinée. Ghana plutôt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to indicate that Ghana is working very closely with the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Ministry of Finance to place the charter before cabinet, and from there we send it to parliament. I think the initial confusion was the process by which this should be done, and it took some time to get the information from the Ministry of Justice. Now everything is clarified and we are working very seriously on it. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Alors donc je passe la parole à EAO pour des commentaires peut-être.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Effectivement, je ne crois pas qu'il y ait une question qui m'a été posée. Seulement, peut-être que les pays, les DG ne connaissent pas trop le processus. Je pense qu'on l'a fait avec l'appui de la Banque mondiale en 2011. Lorsque nous avons eu un appui de la Banque mondiale, nous avons effectué des missions d'explication dans les pays. Et même lors des réunions des DG précédents et les réunions des ministres des Finances, nous avons eu à faire des explications sur ce sujet, mais peut-être que je vais me reprendre encore. C'est que le processus est simple. C'est l'ambassadeur qui est à Addis Ababa ou bien le ministre des Affaires étrangères qui est habilité à signer un traité international. Et le ministère votre ministère de tutelle ne peut pas ratifier la charte. C'est le ministère des Affaires étrangères qui est habilité à ratifier. Mais ce mandat peut être donné à l'ambassadeur président Addis Ababa pour signer la charte. En ce qui concerne la ratification dans des pays, je pense qu'il y a un document que nous avons produit même en collaboration avec Paris 21 en 2012 qui vous a été distribué. Et la ratification dans certains pays dépend du président qui peut prendre la ratification ou le Parlement. Je pense que cela est diversifié dans l'ensemble des pays. Il n'y a pas vraiment une voie uniforme. Mais le cas que nous connaissons, c'est le cas du Sénégal qui nous a expliqué dans le détail comment le faire. C'est que le ministère technique, enfin l'INS, l'Institut de la statistique, doit pouvoir préparer un document technique d'explication de l'importance de la charte qui sera soumis à son ministre de tutelle. Et le ministre de tutelle soumet ça au ministre, au cabinet ministériel, à une réunion du gouvernement, que le gouvernement discute, et ce document est renvoyé au Parlement du pays, si le Parlement doit pouvoir le ratifier. Le Parlement se réunit en sous-groupe, parce qu'il y a des sous-groupes dans le Parlement chargés des questions économiques, bien chargés des questions statistiques, vont examiner le texte, et après le Parlement dans la plénière va l'adopter, et cela revient au président de la République de pouvoir prendre un décret de ratification. Je ne suis pas un juriste, mais c'est ce qu'on nous a essayé de nous expliquer. Donc ce n'est pas l'INS qui peut se lever pour dire que nous devons ratifier. Mais il y a un processus en étroite collaboration avec le ministère des Affaires étrangères pour que le texte soit ratifié. Donc nous allons prendre en compte les pays qui ont ratifié et qui n'ont pas déposé les instruments de ratification, comme la Côte d'Ivoire l'a dit. Lorsque le document est ratifié par le Parlement, vous devez envoyer, venir déposer, on appelle ça déposer les instruments de ratification, vous devez les transférer à l'Union africaine et que nous puissions les enregistrer pour savoir que le pays a effectivement ratifié la Charte africaine de la statistique. Voici un peu brièvement.
The interpreters are saying you are talking into two microphones.
One.
Perhaps there is one there. That one might still be off. Is it off? Okay.
So let me stop there. Maybe your own.
I only switched on mine to intervene, and he was already complaining.
Okay.
So let's get the facts right.
Okay, I think that was the question that was posed to me. Let me stop there. On the issue of integration, I think that we need to discuss with our colleagues from ADB and ECA how to ensure that we prepare a holistic document that will incorporate the issue of ex-post harmonization and ex-ante harmonization. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci beaucoup pour toutes ces clarifications-là. Et donc, on donne maintenant la parole au professeur pour présenter les plans d'activité de l'Institut de statistique de l'Union africaine et du Centre panafricain de formation en statistique.
Thank you, Chair.
15 minutes, professeur. 15 minutes. 15 minutes.
Okay. 15 minutes. Well, that will be an achievement. But let me assume, ladies and gentlemen, that you have looked at the handbook or handout, that it is also in French as well as in English. So I'm going to be very brief, and I'm not going to talk to every slide that you'll see. Some of it is just to complete the record. The roadmaps for the AU Institute for Statistics and the Statistical Training Center are going to be really briefly summarized because they are already available and they're in a tabular form, so it's not easy to talk to each point. But there are 3 items that we are going to cover in 15 minutes. Probably now it's 14. The roadmap, the institutional arrangements, and the structural organizations. Now, the purpose of the presentation, from my point of view, is to bring on board all the stakeholders who are here to know what's going on. And the objective is to promote participation and receive comments to make the report richer than it is at the moment. So I'm not going to encourage myself answering questions. I'm going to encourage people raising issues and finding a way to incorporate them into the report so that it's richer. Now, the roadmap for Institute is in 3 phases. The phase 1 is preparation, and I'm really going to say nothing about it. You already have it. Phase 2 is the takeoff, and phase 3 is the full implementation. It will take about a year for it to be implemented. Now, I'm going to allow interjections, especially from Yeo, if he feels that he wants to say something as I go along, but I hope that he won't have to. Now, the institutional arrangements for the Institute, I begin with a definition. I think we need to know what we are talking about. The policies, systems, processes that organizations use to legislate, plan, and manage the activities and coordinate with other institutions in order to fulfill their mandates. That's also available. Now, the institutional arrangements have been derived from a set of factors which has been collapsed into what we call a dimension. Dimension 1. Also, in addition to the factors, we have principles behind the Institute, which we call dimension 2. And the important point we are trying to derive from there is the positioning of the Institute. What level will the Institute be? Because the positioning determines the institutional arrangements. If you are small, your circle is very small. If you are big, the circle of people you deal with is also big. Once we establish the positioning of the Institute, we add it with the method of work. It will determine the method of work, how you are going to operate. And once those two are established, you should have institutional arrangements defined. Now, there are 5 factors. I'm not going to read through any one of them because they are already visible. Those 5 factors are linked to the objectives of the Institute. The factors are the roles, the tasks, the operational scale, and the source of legitimacy. Okay, so we know the objectives are to provide African statistics and to develop and promote statistical standards. Basically, you can collapse everything into those 2, and how they interact with the factors is shown in the table. I would like to draw attention to the roles of data harmonization, reporting on Africa, provision of standards, and attention to the operational scale. All these are supranational. They operate above the member states, and they require member states to do certain things. Now, I don't have to go through this as well because this is a continuation of the first table. Again, the roles and scale of operation emphasize the supranational nature of the Institute. I don't have to go into this. This is a process which I have used to collapse. If you are a statistician, like principal components of fact analysis, you just collapse them into dimensions. And then I go to the guiding principles. Remember, the first dimension was the factors. The second, the principles. Now, the principles are 3. If we have to operate as an institute at a supranational level, then we should have convening power. The capacity to interact and assemble high-level leaders and political actors to discuss and resolve issues. We have to have that power. If we don't, we are playing around. The second is professional or scientific independence. That's, of course, provided in the Charter. If we are going to implement the Charter, we have to follow what it says as an institute. The third is connection to the African integration agenda. This is the very reason why there is this institute, to advance the agenda by developing capacity to product to produce good quality statistics that are comparable. So the three: convening power, professional independence, and connection to the African agenda. These have meanings in the end. If you bring the factors, the dimension 1 and dimension 2, we would recommend that the level or the positioning should be at commission level if you compare it to the structure of the rest of the institute. And it should be within the structure of the institute, simply because he's supposed to serve the African Union. Now, the institute's institutional arrangements, I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. I have worked out the entities that are involved with the institute, the relationships that they should have, and the method of work. And if I go through all of them, I will have consumed by 7 minutes that are probably remaining. So we now go to the structural organization of the institute, and we should remember the positioning that we have proposed. Okay? Now, by definition, a structural organization may be defined as a mapping of the hierarchical arrangements of lines of authority, communication, rights and duties of positions and tasks of the two institutions. This determines the roles, the power and the responsibilities, controlled and coordinated, and how information will flow from one level to the other. Now, the principles behind the structural organizations are nothing new. This is standard organizational work. You have the unit of objectives, specialization, delegation of authority, coordination, and chain of command. These are taken into account in working out the structure. And the structure is given in the organogram. This is a line function structure. We shall have to see the difference between that and the flow of work and decisions, which are different. And we have basically 3 levels. The management one, union statistician, union deputy statistician reporting to the chair, and the departments. Now, this is different from what's practiced at AUC at the moment. At AUC, you have a political head who's a commissioner, you have a director, and then you have the divisions. Here we are saying that cannot work because there is so much technical work of different capacities that you need. So we are going to have to propose departments under which you have divisions. What about reporting? It will be dual. I have already mentioned one will be line function, which is that one. That's the line function reporting. But then we have another form of reporting of the program, of activity, and other arrangements. And these are what we are actually doing now. This is the second part, where you have the divisions reporting to departments, reporting to deputy statistician, union statistician, and then the chair of the AUC. That is the line function. And there is authority, there is accountability, all pointing upwards to the chair. And what about the other reporting, where you have to decisions, flow of work? The institute should report to the Committee of Directors General. That's already established anyway, and that's why we're here. And that goes to the Conference of Ministers, that's already established, and to the Assembly of Heads of State and Government. That's where decisions are made, okay? That's where approvals and recommendations are made. Now we go to the training center. Now I have already said quite a mouthful about the institute, and some of those things I have said will apply to the training center as well. But I thought that since the training center is, you forgive the training center spelling, since it is less talked about, according to me, than the institute, I should actually mention what we think the functions will be. To address the lack of critical mass of statisticians, there is a lack of statisticians. It should be addressed, especially in specialized areas. We should provide specialized education and training in statistics in a professional and technical sense, specialized. The assembly was very clear about economic statistics, especially national accounts, that should be attended to. We should bridge the gap between Anglophone and Francophone. I should have said Lusophone as well, statisticians, not just to speak the French or English language, but to be able to communicate on technical issues. Training systems, Francophone and Anglophone, are different, according to me anyway. Providing courses in French and English in areas of organization and management of statistics, and communicating and marketing, and provide refresher courses to some of us who may have rusted a little bit with our work and we need to shape up. Now, I'm not going to talk to the phases as I didn't. There are 3 phases also, and it's also take about a year to establish the center. What are the institutional arrangements? The same approach that I took, or we took. Has something happened here? Well, Samson. He's talking of diaporama and reprendere something.
I think, yeah.
Are we okay now?
Here we see, but I think
I want to be able to see there.
we move little this business. Yeah. Now it's there.
Now it's there.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Samson. He said I was moving my hand too much on the left. Now, I've gone through this process, so I'm not really going to talk about it. It's the same, but the guiding principles are slightly nuanced towards education. The training center mandated the assembly of heads of, was mandated to establish relationships with regional training schools. It says so, that it will get trainees from these schools as a mandate. It should also have convening power, but this time bringing together training schools into system, statistical training, and rationalizing training programs and the curricula of regional training schools. And of course, training for the African integration agenda as the principle, the 3rd principle. And we are saying that given the principles, given the factors, the training center should be at the apex of the hierarchy of statistical training institutions, at the apex. Now notice there is a difference. There is very little authority, in terms of authority, that the center can have compared to the institute, okay? But organizationally, it's at the apex because it's providing specialized training. And the institutional arrangements, we do have the stakeholder categories, relationships, method of work, as we did with the institute. So we are not going to deal with that. I will look at the structural organization or organogram. Now, the way we are going to train, we are not going to have big departments teaching statistics or mathematical statistics or national accounts as such. This is essentially a coordinating enterprise. Okay? We have departments, with expertise, but the expertise are basically coordinators. If they want to train, they can always outsource and get somebody else. So the organogram is basically saying we'll have departments and supporting units, and in there I would like to mention a language library and also research and postgraduate studies. They won't be supervising PhDs, but they can have an institute doing it on their behalf. I know the DG for South Africa can tell us his experience regarding this kind of work has been doing with the Stellenbosch. And we have a scientific committee on the site to advise, and we report to a director, a board, and to the minister. I remember Cote d'Ivoire will be responsible for day-to-day management and running of these issues because that's where they're hosted. The same lining function. I'm not going to go into detail. And also the flow of decisions and programs and activities. But notice that there is a clear line between what the Institute desires, so the Pan-African Statistical Training Center can do, and the reporting to the committees of directors general. Because these are the people actually, you are the guys who are going to demand that the center does certain things. What are my concluding comments? One is we have to consider positioning appropriately. Otherwise, the institute will not perform effectively. Two, it is important to position the center to lead African statistical training system. And to do that, we have to address a number of challenges. The first one being we should be able to offer, or the center should be able to offer very clearly certain services over and above what other schools are providing. And that should be unambiguously done. Two, there should be a forum of statistical capacity building institutions coordinated by the center. You should rationalize the training programs, the curricula, and other initiatives in education. Three, getting the institute to support the center to align training programs to the African integration agenda. The center has to remain relevant to the agenda. Then we feel that AfriStat should join the ACBF. It may not give money, but it should join as a strategic partner to the Institute and Training Center. This is something that we discovered in our stakeholding. And finally, Chair, we need to develop an advocacy program to encourage RECs, those without statistics units, to establish them. The Institute should actually spearhead that. Thank you, Chair, and ladies and gentlemen. In here we say, Siabuler Kakul. Now we have to do some housekeeping. The first housekeeping is for our own interest. We sent a questionnaire to NSOs and requested them to respond so that we can make the report enriched. Make sure your opinions and feelings are involved in the report. Please, please, return those to Samson. Samson is up. Please, Samson, stand up. The second one is they say we should have to go to the hotel reception and inform us about their departure dates and time so they can organize transport for us. I think we have overstayed our invitations here. Thank you very much.
Félicitations, prof, pour cette présentation, pour cette excellente présentation très pédagogique, articulée autour de deux principaux points. Donc, la feuille de route des deux institutions, les arrangements institutionnels et organisationnels, et tout cela en fonction donc d'un certain nombre de critères et de principes. Vous avez aussi fini par présenter des recommandations, des conclusions très, très intéressantes. Donc, merci beaucoup encore une fois pour cette excellente présentation. Oui, qu'est-ce que tu as? Tu as levé le doigt. Qu'est-ce que tu as? Hein? Qu'est-ce que tu veux clarifier? Hein? OK. Qu'est-ce que tu veux clarifier? Allez, allez.
Avant de passer la parole, parce que le professeur n'a pas eu le temps de clarifier ce que l'école doit faire par rapport aux écoles existantes. Je pense que cela doit être clair avant qu'on ait des questions pour nous dire quelle est la valeur ajoutée de l'école. Je pense qu'il a dit, on a dit que l'école va faire des cours de formation continue. L'école ne va pas faire des formations initiales. Je pense que cela doit être clair pour tout le monde. La deuxième chose, l'école doit faire des spécialisations. C'est-à-dire que dans les écoles, on forme les gens au niveau master. Vous devez aller à l'école pour faire 6 mois de spécialisation en comptabilité nationale, en statistique du commerce, dans les domaines bien précis, ce que les écoles existantes ne font pas aujourd'hui. La troisième chose que l'école va faire, c'est de pouvoir aussi former les gens dans les statistiques émergentes, comme la gouvernance, les statistiques du genre, ce qui n'existe pas aujourd'hui dans nos écoles. Je pense que cela doit être clair pour tout le monde. Le troisième aspect que je viens de dire, c'est le leadership et le management des instituts nationaux de statistiques et de marketing statistique. Ce qui n'est pas fait, nous pensons que l'école doit pouvoir faire cela. Le cinquième aspect, c'est de former les politiques, les parlementaires, pour qu'ils comprennent, et les médias, pour qu'ils comprennent la finalité de la statistique. Nous pensons que cela est important. Nous pensons que l'école panafricaine doit pouvoir jouer ce rôle. Le sixième aspect, c'est qu'il y a des pays qui n'ont pas de statisticiens. Je pense que cela a été évoqué par DRSI lorsque nous étions au Sénégal. L'école, comme il a dit, c'est un centre de coordination. L'école se déploie dans ces pays-là pour former une masse critique. L'école va réunir, le pays va donner des salles, l'école réunit des professeurs pour former sans statisticiens à des choses vraiment bien précises, ce que les écoles existantes ne font pas. Donc l'école se déploie dans des pays pour assurer ces formations-là. Je pense qu'il doit vraiment clarifier ces six aspects-là que les écoles existantes ne font pas maintenant. Ce que je voulais dire par rapport à l'organisation institutionnelle, le professeur a dit que nous rapportons au comité des DG. Je pense qu'il y a un aspect qu'on a oublié aussi, c'est qu'on a dit aussi qu'on doit associer les boards, comment on appelle ça en français, les conseils, les présidents des conseils statistiques. Nous pensons que votre réunion est une réunion annuelle, une session annuelle. Mais la deuxième année, nous pouvons vous associer les présidents des conseils nationaux de statistiques et des utilisateurs, qui sont les planificateurs et des médias, pour recevoir les domaines, enfin les utilisateurs des données, pour que nous prenions connaissance de ces demandes-là et pour que l'Institut puisse avoir vraiment un mandat clair ou bien des nouvelles statistiques que les demandeurs leur demandent de produire, pour qu'on ait un programme statistique pour produire les statistiques qui rencontrent les besoins des utilisateurs. Donc chaque 2 ans, que votre réunion de DG, qu'on peut vous ajouter les présidents de conseils, les médias, les planificateurs, pour qu'on ait une réunion des demandeurs de la statistique, afin que nous produisions des statistiques de qualité pour répondre à leurs besoins. Je pense que c'est ces différents aspects que je voulais préciser après la présentation du prof. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Donc la discussion est ouverte. On va commencer par la gauche. Oui. Et puis la droite, donc puis l'Afrique du Sud. Et puis c'est le centre. OK.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Je remercie tous ceux qui ont travaillé sur le document. Mais je considère que ce document est un avant-projet. Parce qu'après l'exposé et tout ce qu'on a entendu montre que nous devons travailler sur la forme et sur le fond du document. D'abord, le document manque de structuration. Lorsque vous prenez le document après les abréviations, pour examiner chaque chapitre, vous êtes obligé de rentrer à l'intérieur. Il n'y a pas un cadre qui retrace les chapitres et les pages correspondantes. 2, la table des matières, d'accord. 2, des structures aussi importantes. Et vous allez voir que le contexte est parti se cacher quelque part. Quelque part. Ce n'est pas bon. Donc, pour conclure, je pense qu'il faut mettre en place un groupe technique qui doit travailler sur le fond, sur la forme. Surtout, M. Yeo, si le document était bien parlant, il n'a pas besoin de reprendre la parole pour donner des précisions. Toutes ces précisions-là, en principe, on doit les retrouver à travers le document. Et après ça, il faut soumettre aux juristes qui doivent voir la corrélation de tout ce qui est dedans avec les tests réglementaires de l'Union. Et c'est après ça qu'on saura qu'on aura un projet qu'on doit valider. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. Oui.
Thank you very much. I think the AU has to be congratulated for really driving us in the right direction on this. I think the key thrust, which is about the positioning of the institute, is an important one, and it's consistent with what we see in our own countries in relation to positioning of statistics as an entity within accountability structures of our countries. So the logic towards that positioning is well supported with the developments that are taking place. The second, I think, by buttressing it with an apex institution for training, I think it's also a very good process, I think, according to me, to get ourselves and get harmony in the way we train. The third, I think, picking up on the issue of language, which is French, English, Arabic, Portuguese, also very, very, very great. And therefore, I think I endorse all that it says. I have, however, having looked at the content of the document, picked up on two things that are critical. And these two things have to do with the governance and the nexus of decision-making. Our discussions and the last minute that I have is that we would be consulted on the matter of the training institute. And the last time the minute says we will canvass, countries will canvass and get a discussion. While now we are vexed with a situation where ministers have, heads of states have decided, it is important for AUC, the Secretariat, to go and tell our heads of states that that particular step was omitted, so that we don't have blood on our hands when we don't deserve to. It's important to do that, because if we can't be transparent on this, these things will come and bite us. The second one, of course, is we never discussed it, and maybe we never had authority to discuss it anyway, because the decision to have the institute, which is documented here, the consultation between, but the question is, why were we not consulted when we weren't consulted on the other? Because this is inconsistency in the process of decision making. And these two must serve with our heads of institutions. The third is that if we agree that this must be led by a commissioner, I wonder if the chair of the commission will like her commissioner sitting far away from all other commissioners. It will be an aborted process. But all in all, the content and everything I agree to. But the decisions have been made by the heads of states, but we have to make these consequences of their decisions known. The process with which this we arrived at must be known by the heads of states, because we shall not, as Director Generals, have blood on our hands, facilitated by the Secretariat and not ourselves. Thanks.
Merci.